Hey guys, so Jaclyn Glenn, she is a YouTuber. She talks, I think, most about atheist stuff and being an atheist, being a former Christian turned atheist. She put up a video with another YouTuber, Chris, I don't know the name of his channel, called Crazy Vegan Idiots. That's great, right? So first, the good thing, they start off right from the beginning of the video, which I do appreciate, saying that this is more of a vocal minority, that the Sorshas and the Freelees are a vocal minority, that most vegans are like cool people and not crazy idiots. They're not dicks, right? So that's cool, and I appreciate again that they started the video with that. But for the most part, the rest of the video is not great. there are a lot of problems and a lot of I'll be nice and say misunderstanding. Yeah, let's get to it.
They equate you with rapists and murderers and just like these ridiculous comparisons that it's just really... Oh, racists, that's another one. And later in this video, you'll see how they pretty much equate slavery to eating meat.
There's a difference between comparing and equating two things. So I can compare the love that I have for my cat to the love that I have for my baby. That doesn't mean that I love them equally. You clearly have both of these words in your vocabulary, you just don't seem to understand that they are two different things. And yet, you probably expect people to understand that when you compare two things, that you are not necessarily equating the things that you are comparing. For example,
really like to use this knife on him. Like, he really does deserve to die.
You're killing animals. He's sticking up for the animals. He'll
Right.
murder the murderers.
Exactly. It's
Because
just
the
like
eye for eye does great.
It's like those pro-life people that blow up abortion clinics, you know? The logic is great.
oh, so you are an anti-animal misogynist, right? I mean, because with that comparison, you were clearly equating sentient animals with a cluster of cells, and you were clearly equating a woman's deeply emotional choice with a choice that you make for lunch. See how ridiculous that is? It's ridiculous because it's clearer to most people that you were not equating, you were comparing, you were looking for the similarities in reasoning or logic, not saying the situations were the same. You were only comparing the general idea of doing harm for a cause. You weren't equating the, specifics of moral value or the validity of the causes, etc. So why don't you seem to understand when vegans do the same thing? Maybe it's just easier not to, and instead perpetuate the notion that vegans are crazy and idiotic and insensitive.
To compare animal slavery to black slavery is not to undermine the horrors that blacks have gone through and continue to go through in society.
Yeah, here's the thing. I'm a very good listener.
Yeah.
And I still have no freaking idea what she is saying. But I do know that she is trying to definitely undermine slavery.
Yeah, how can you can't just say, I'm not trying to undermine slavery by comparing it to eating meat, but you are. You are doing that exact thing. You're undermining horrible treatment of human beings.
Yes.
Just because people eat meat.
And this is when I really hate when vegans like Sorsha or Freelee compare slavery or the Holocaust to factory farming. It's not because they're wrong, it's because most people become too emotional, too outraged to really hear what they are saying. Because we have to speak to our audiences, these comparisons just aren't always the best advocacy, even if that means dumbing down things in order to deny ammunition to people who seem determined to take our words the wrong way.
And I do actually think that being vegan is a great thing.
And yet you went out of your way to make this video. You went out of your way to highlight bad vegan activism without pointing out any of the good vegan activism. You went out of your way to cherry pick and misunderstand and give your friend a platform to further denigrate veganism.
Make the choices for yourself. Don't make the choices for other people. And to think that vegan diet's like you can eat Oreos for the rest of your life, and that's a completely vegan diet, and it's not healthy. So it's not to say that veganism works for everyone, because it doesn't.
First, an Oreo diet works for nobody. I don't really think that needs to be said. But a properly planned vegan diet works for anybody, and by works I mean provides adequate nutrition for good health. If you're having trouble with this, see a registered dietitian. I made a video recently on this. You can check it out right here. It is the position of the American Dietetic Association that appropriately planned vegetarian diets, including total vegetarian or vegan diets, are healthful, nutritionally adequate, and may provide health benefits in the prevention and treatment of certain diseases. Well-planned vegetarian diets are appropriate for individuals during all stages of the life cycle, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, and adolescence, and for athletes. That is science. You can have your own opinions, but you can't have your own facts. I mean, I'm sure it bothers you when creationists come to the table with their own facts. And if so, maybe don't do the same thing when it comes to veganism. Also, this waxing relativistic nihilism
Make the choices for yourself, don't make the choices for other people.
really does not make either of you good advocates for atheism. You're basically playing right into the cliche. How about you make the choice to rape and murder for yourself and not make the choices for others? Ooh, shit, that was a comparison. You probably thought I was saying that rape and murder are equal to eating meat. I'll make it simple. What you're saying with this reasoning and view on morality is this. Make the choice to do X immoral action for yourself. Don't make the choice for other people. In other words, let people do whatever they want. It doesn't matter if X is raping, murdering, eating meat, or farting in an elevator. No, they are not all equal, but they all carry some degree of harm to others. It makes sense to judge actions as right or wrong based on how they affect others. While it's harder to judge a person as good or bad since there are just so many different variables, for instance, you could have someone who eats meat but does a lot of charity, it is sensible to understand that all things being equal, a person who is vegan is better than a person who is not. Two people who do the same amount of charity, they are both equally nice in the same exact way. The only difference is one eats meat and one eats tofu. The latter is the better person. And that's not to say that you're bad people. I don't know what you do or don't do in your, daily lives. But if you can't admit that if you were more mindful about your choices to eat animal products and the harm that this causes to others and, maybe tried to cut back a bit, then you are playing right into the atheists have no morality criticism that I'm sure you're very familiar with.
You're a much more moral person than I am, and I have to say that. There might be other people who would say, or many people who would say, but where does your morality come from in the first place? As I said, you're perhaps the most moral person I've ever met, but where does it come from? Why don't you... Suppose somebody were to say to you, well, you don't believe in God, obviously, so why do you care? I mean, what's the origin of your concern for the pain that other sentient beings feel?
For me, what living ethically is about is about not just thinking about yourself, but putting yourself in the position of other beings who are affected by your action.
The moral of the story here is don't be so pushy and mean and negative. It's never ever going to get through to the masses like that.
With the exception of Vegan Gains, who has really changed for the better lately, I did a video on this here, I do not believe that Freelee or Sorsha are effective or good for the vegan movement. This is something I've talked about extensively on this channel, not just Freelee and Sorsha, but other vegans who are... you might define as crazy idiots. That said, I do think that maybe you guys should look inward and ask yourselves if you might have been a bit defensive here. Maybe, just maybe, you are advocating some of the same bad straw man arguments that the people you criticize use, ignoring the science when it suits you, and in the blasé attitudes that you have shown toward the notion of improving yourselves ethically. You may be demonstrating the very nihilism and relativism that atheists are often criticized for, and as a result, acting as living examples against your own cause. And that's it. And just to wrap things up, this is really a good example of why I focus so much on the problems of veganism. I know some of you get really mad at me for that, for not tackling the kind of anti-vegan stuff, but this is why I focus on, the poor vegan activists like Freelee and Sorsha, and the really ridiculous vegan diets like raw vegan diets and high carb low fat vegan diets and the cleanses and all that bullshit. This is why, because when you have people like Jaclyn and Chris, you have people who clearly don't want to take veganism seriously. They clearly are not going to take the time to actually look into the arguments and see what reasonable, rational vegans have to say, even though they recognize that most vegans are reasonable and rational. When you take these people, and then the most popular vegans on YouTube are Christina, who promotes a really, really terrible, really ridiculous diet, Freelee, who promotes a ridiculous diet and ridiculous ethics as well a lot of the time, Sorsha, who's Sorsha, and Vegan Gains used to be really bad. As I said, he's changed a lot in the last few months or so. Gary Yourofsky and his Fuck Human Rights, although I don't think his channel's that big, but he is a more well-known vegan, I guess well-known vegan, more among vegans than the outside world. But when that's what you see when you look up veganism on YouTube and you're already looking for reasons not to be vegan, that sucks. I mean, you're just, again, we have to speak to our audiences and to just, I think vegans just assume that we can tell them the facts and yell at them and people are just going to be open to it. But you're starting with people who already aren't open to it, whether that's because they have preconceived notions about what is healthy, or it's because they don't want to not be normal. They just don't want to worry about it. They don't want to have to think about what's on their plate at every meal. We can't expect people like that to be receptive to this. Even Jaclyn and Chris, who have both made changes, Christian to atheist, they had to stop and think. They really made a huge change. It's something that most people won't do and will never do. And even for them, they're having a hard time with this. And we see this a lot in the atheist community, in the skeptic community. I may do that video eventually, but this is not unheard of at all. You have people who are supposedly skeptics, supposedly very scrutinizing and looking for the evidence and not emotional and not biased, and yet they are making the exact same arguments that quote-unquote silly, non-skeptical people make. It makes our job just spreading the word and trying to get people to reduce their animal product consumption and use, it makes our job really, really hard. And people like Freelee and Sorsha only make our job that much harder, because you are, like I said before, what we should do is deny people ammunition. They are giving people so much ammunition, and it really sucks. Kind of ending on a downer. I'm sorry. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Jaclyn and Chris, I hope I wasn't too mean, a little bit condescending. I know, I'm pretty smug. Sorry. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. If you're even watching it, I don't know. Thanks so much, guys. Comments, questions, leave it down below. Subscribe, and I'll have a new video very soon.